U.S. warning to American citizens about imminent attacks in Moscow proves prophetic 2 weeks later. Russian President Putin dismissed the U.S. warnings as blackmail just days before the attack, which claimed the lives of more than 130. We have an update for you. Reparations are back in the news, with the Boston Task Force on Reparations called on white churches to step up and pay the black community back for racial inequities that root back to the transatlantic slave trade, according to reports. And former RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel is receiving backlash on her new gig with NBC. Some of the harshest criticism coming from within NBC. Chuck Todd unleashed on the network's hiring of the former RNC Chairwoman moments after she made her Sunday debut on Meet the Press. And for all of you dog owners out there, do you sometimes think about skipping the daily walk and think, it's no big deal? Wrong, and I'll tell you why coming up. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Just the Truth. Glad to have you join me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition to lose weight for the last time. Visit myphdweightloss.com. Hope you'll join the conversation today, and it's real easy. Just send me your text messages via the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. You can leave a voice message. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
We've learned that 2 weeks prior to Friday's attack on this large concert hall in Russia, that the U.S. government had issued a warning to Americans to, quote, avoid large gatherings, including concerts, because of imminent plans for an attack by extremists. Now, sadly, the attack has left more than 130 dead, and that list seems to be growing. The statement that the U.S. Embassy put out on March the 7th said the embassy is monitoring reports that extremists have imminent plans to target large gatherings in Moscow, to include concerts, and U.S. citizens should be advised to avoid large gatherings over the next 48 hours. The Islamic State group ISIS claimed responsibility for Friday's attack, which the U.S. has confirmed despite Russian officials trying to point the blame at Ukraine. Russian President Putin dismissed the U.S. warnings as blackmail just days before the attack. 3 days before the attack, Putin said, quote, all this resembles outright blackmail and the intention to intimidate and destabilize our society, calling the warnings provocative, according to Russian news agency TASS. The State Department confirmed that U.S. intelligence had information about a planned terrorist attack in Moscow, which prompted the agency to issue the public advisory. The U.S. government also shared this information with Russian authorities in accordance with its longstanding duty to warn policy. On Saturday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken put out a statement saying the United States strongly condemns Friday's deadly terrorist attack in Moscow. We send our deepest condolences to the families and loved ones of those killed and all affected by this heinous crime. We condemn terrorism in all its form and stand in solidarity with the people of Russia in grieving the loss of life from this horrific event. Also, on Saturday, Putin addressed the nation in a televised broadcast, slamming the massacre as a bloody, barbaric terrorist act. He declared yesterday a day of mourning. Putin said that additional security measures have been put in place throughout the country following this attack, the deadliest in Russia in over 20 years. Ukrainian President Zelensky has denied any involvement by his nation. The surprise attack began when gunmen wearing combat gear burst into Crocus City Hall, where concert-goers were gathering to hear the Russian band known as Picnic. Video online showed the gunmen opening fire, shooting attendees at close range, and setting off smoke bombs. The gunmen also threw explosives inside the concert hall during the attack, rocking the building and setting it on fire, according to local Russian media. People were being evacuated, but some remained trapped inside the burning building. The roof of the theater then collapsed in the early hours of Saturday as firefighters spent literally hours fighting the flame. Russians laid flowers at memorials and lined up to give blood to help those who were injured. Putin said that the Federal Security Service, known as FSB of Russia, and other law enforcement agencies are working to identify the entire terrorist support. Putin said those who provided them with transport, planned escape routes from the crime scene, prepared caches of weapons and ammunition. It's already obvious that we are faced not just with a carefully and cynically planned terrorist attack, but with the organized mass murder of peaceful, defenseless people, he said. The intelligence community said it believes the ISIS affiliate in Afghanistan called Islamic State Khorasan, or ISIS-K as it's known, carried out the attack. It's the same terrorist group that killed 13 American service members at Abbey Gate during the hasty U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021. So who is ISIS-K? Let me give you just a quick rundown of what we know about this Islamic State affiliate that's said to carry out the killings in Moscow on Friday. The idea, according to a lot of intelligence officials, is to weaken the Taliban's relations with allies and to show Afghanistan's government can't guarantee security. In the eyes of ISIS-K, the Taliban are ruling Afghanistan in an insufficiently hardline way, falling short of enforcing true Sharia law. ISIS-K seeks to outperform rival jihadis by carrying out more audacious attacks to distinguish its jihadi brand and to assert leadership of the global jihadi vanguard, according to an expert at the United States Institute of Peace. After its leaders split from al-Qaeda and the Taliban, ISIS-K surfaced in 2014 and 2015 in Afghanistan, adjoining Pakistan. ISIS-Khorasan was one of the first branches in Central Asia to pledge allegiance to ISIS, espousing more militant views than its rivals, including al-Qaeda and the Taliban. Analysts at the Center for Strategic and International Studies said ISIS-K, which remains based mostly in eastern Afghanistan and Pakistan, has been trying to expand across what historically was known as the Khorasan region, which includes parts of Central Asia, Afghanistan, Iran, and Pakistan. 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line. Leave a quick voice message. Emails welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. So the Boston Reparations Task Force has some ideas of what reparations look like. I'm going to give you the details on their meeting and their news conference from over the weekend. First, let me talk with you about losing weight. Do you need to lose 10, 20, 30 pounds or more? Are you ready to get healthy? Are you ready to maybe fit into that swimsuit a little easier as we head into summer? Look, this past weekend I spent a lot of time out on the lake. Boy, did we have a great weekend. Even though it rained a little, we still overall had a great weekend. And it was just a time to get outside and do some things. And a lot of that involved being out on the lake. And if you, like me, don't want your swimsuit to be too tight, then maybe you need to consider setting up an appointment with PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition. Almost 4 years ago now, I was introduced to Dr. Ashley Lucas with PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition. I went to their Greenville office. They have an office in Asheville as well, Charlotte, Lake Norman. And they helped me lose 30 pounds pretty quickly. And I've been able to maintain that weight for almost 4 years now. You can too. Call 864-252-4925. Don't put it off. Do it today. 864-252-4925. Write that number down and call and set up your initial consultation and see if this program's right for you. You can find them online as well at myphdweightloss.com. PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition, the official partner of the Clemson Tigers. Let's start in Boston, Massachusetts.
If we go back to 25 years, 30 years, 40 years, there's always been this question. what is owed us. I always think about if we had compensation for every second of enslavement on the legal books, and we assigned a dollar value to that, how much would that be? How much would that have been rendered as far as cost? And not to then even put on the mental effects, but just on a basis of compensation in dollars, that wealth gap that we experience is within this realm of what is a considerable amount of time to place in a well for how much is this valued? How much does this support the building of a nation? And what is the result of those who are the beneficiaries and those who are not?
That was the voice of Boston Reparations Task Force member Lamerche Frazier on the examination of the history of slavery practice in the U.S. and how she and other members of the task force believed their work could lead to, quote, real dollars being paid to black people. Until now, we didn't know where that money was going to come from. The committee held a news conference over the weekend and cleared that up for us. The Boston Task Force on Reparations called on white churches to step up and pay the black community for the racial inequalities that root back to the transatlantic slave trade, according to reports. The Boston Globe reported that black and white clergy members met in Roxbury for a press conference intended to be held outside, though instead it was held in the basement of the Resurrection Lutheran Church on Saturday because of bad weather. The commission was established through a 2022 Boston City Council ordinance, you may recall. We've talked about this in the past. It's made up of 10 members, including 2 from the youth community. Back in February, the Boston activists called for the city to fully commit to writing checks for a $15 billion payout since the city's wealth was built on slavery, according to the committee. Reverend Kevin Peterson said, "We call sincerely and with a heart filled with faith and Christian love for our white churches to join us and not be silent around this issue of racism and slavery and commit to reparations," the Reverend said. Peterson is a minister trying to rename a number of local buildings that are tied to slavery. Peterson said, "We point to them in Christian love to publicly atone for the sins of slavery, and we ask them to commit publicly to a process of reparations where they'll extend their great wealth, tens of millions of dollars among some of those churches, into the black community," he said. 16 religious leaders signed the letter and sent it to several churches in the Boston area, seeking their support. Specifically, in a letter obtained by the Globe, the group calls on churches to provide cash payments while also helping to create affordable housing and to back new financial institutions in Black Boston. The letter was reportedly sent to Arlington Street Church, Trinity Church, Old South Church in Back Bay, King's Chapel in downtown Boston. All 4 churches were established in the 17th and 18th centuries, according to local media. During their news conference on Saturday, Reverend John Gibbons of Arlington Street Church told reporters that multiple churches are researching their history and discussing reparations. He said that's not enough. Somehow we need to move with some urgency towards action, and so part of what we're doing is to prod and encourage white churches to go beyond what they've done thus far. King's Chapel senior minister Reverend Joy Fallon said that the congregation at the church is establishing a memorial to people who were enslaved while also working to establish a fund to support social justice and reconciliation. The Globe reported last year that the church paid for research which identified 219 people who were owned by ministers and members of the congregation. Fallon, as well as representatives from Trinity Church and Old South Church, did not immediately respond to media inquiries. Also in February, the commission, in a news conference where Peterson demanded full monetary compensation for wages and lost lives through slavery and anti-black institutional oppression, that's when they came up with the idea that this could potentially cost $15 billion, and they want it in three distinct types of payments. One form of payment would be $5 billion of cash payments to Boston's black residents. Another would be $5 billion to invest in new financial institutions, and the remaining $5 billion would go towards addressing the racial disparities in education and anti-crime measures. The Globe notes that this is more than 3 times the annual budget in Boston, which is set at $4.28 billion for fiscal year 2024. Before the press conference last month, Peterson released a statement claiming the debt must be paid in dollars. On Saturday, Danielle Williams, the director of a social justice group called Prophetic Resistance Boston, reportedly said her great-great-grandmother was taken into slavery in Africa and shipped to North Carolina. Williams also spoke about the holy tradition of Jesus washing his disciples' feet. Black people, the descendants of slavery, have been washing the feet of our oppressors for well over 400 years, she said. Now it's time for you to wash our feet. The descendants of slavery, we want our reparations. We want it now, she said. 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line. What do you think about this? We've talked about reparations in the past, but now it's starting to become real in some of these areas. I mean, to the point that you have some of these churches, evidently, who are actually researching to see if some of their ministers and some of their church leaders actually own slaves. So let's assume that they did. Let's assume that 3 generations ago, a minister at one of these churches owned slaves. Does the church owe all the black people in Boston money? I mean, this whole idea that they're supposed to write a check for $15 billion and the way this reads, every single black person in Boston would get something. And when these leaders are talking about the sense of urgency, it just makes me think their sense of urgency is that they want to get their fair share before they die. Again, is this going to change anything? It's certainly not going to change slavery, not going to change the fact that it happened. Was it a dark time in our nation's history? Yes, it was. Do we owe them a check because of it? I don't think so. Love to get your feedback, though. 864-477-5639. Comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line. Former RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel is receiving backlash on her new job at NBC News. Some of the harshest criticism is coming from within NBC. Chuck Todd unleashed on the network's hiring of the former RNC Chairwoman moments after she had made her Sunday debut on Meet the Press. I'll give you the details on that in just a moment. First, let me talk with you about that new vehicle. Did you go out and maybe look at some new vehicles over the weekend? Did you drive by Furman Ford in Lawrence? If you didn't, then you haven't seen the best deals on Fords and other vehicles. If you're looking for, let's say, a well-cared-for pre-owned vehicle, one that you can trust, then Furman Ford's your answer. If you're looking for a new Ford, Furman Ford is definitely your answer. Let me encourage you to go to Lawrence and introduce yourself to Jim Furman and Matthew Furman. I love doing business with local businesses, and that's what you get at Furman Ford. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line with every single transaction, and they take that very seriously. You'll love meeting Jim and Matthew Furman. When you call when you send an email or when you stop by, you can always ask to meet one of the Furman Ford family members. Let me encourage you to do that today. Find them online at furmanford.com. Furmanford.com, you can see a full list of their inventory. Chuck Todd told NBC host Kristen Welker that NBC should apologize for having her interview Ronna McDaniel, who he said many journalists at the network were, quote, uncomfortable with being a paid contributor. Here's Chuck Todd.
Let me deal with the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I think our bosses owe you an apology for putting you in this situation, because I don't know what to believe. She is now a paid contributor by NBC News. Well, I have no idea whether any answer she gave to you was because she didn't want to mess up her contract. She wants us to believe that she was speaking for the RNC when the RNC was paying for her. So she has credibility issues that she still has to deal with.
Yeah.
Is she speaking for herself, or is she speaking on behalf of who's paying her? Once at the RNC, she did say that, hey, I'm speaking for the party. I get that. That's part of the job. So what about here? I will say this. I think your interview did a good job of exposing, I think, many of the contradictions. And look, there's a reason why there's a lot of journalists at NBC News uncomfortable with this, because many of our professional dealings with the RNC over the last 6 years have been met with gaslighting, have been met with character assassination. So that's where you begin here. And so when NBC made the decision to give her NBC News' credibility, you got to ask yourself, what does she bring NBC News? And when we make deals like this, and I've been at this company a long time, you're doing it for access to audience. Sometimes it's access to an individual, and we can have a journalistic ethics debate about that. And I'm willing to have that debate. And if you told me we were hiring her as a technical advisor to the Republican convention, I think that would be certainly defensible. If you told me we're talking to her, but let's see how she does in some interviews and maybe vet her with actual journalists inside the network, see if it's a two-way, what she can bring the network. So I do think, unfortunately, this interview is always going to be looked through the prism of who is she speaking for, right? I think you did everything you could do. You got put into an impossible situation, booking this interview, and then all of a sudden the rugs pull out from under you. You find out she's being paid to show up. It's unfortunate for this program, but I am glad you did the best that you could, and that's why the three of us are on here to try to bolster that editorial independence.
Wow. Now, Ronna McDaniel appears to be a person without a home, because the RNC has kicked her out. Now her new employer, NBC, she's not getting a very warm welcome over there. Journalist Glenn Greenwald now, he pointed out that all the melodrama never occurs when Democrat operatives are hired by the major networks like ABC and NBC. Greenwald cited former White House press secretary Jen Psaki, who negotiated her deal with MSNBC before leaving the Biden administration, as an example. And he's right. Not to defend Ronna McDaniel, but why is it okay for people like George Stephanopoulos, for example, on ABC? He was hired. He had no journalism experience at all. He was hired right after leaving Bill Clinton's administration. NBC also hired John Brennan as a contributor in 2018 after serving as the CIA chief during the Obama administration. And the parent network is not the only pushback. There's internal backlash at NBC and MSNBC following McDaniel's hiring, as various MSNBC anchors and producers say that they're concerned about the former RNC chairperson's attachment to President Donald Trump. MSNBC President Rashida Jones said that she, quote, has no plans to have McDaniel on the channel, according to the Wall Street Journal. Byron York posted on X over the weekend, you may have read that former RNC chief Ronna McDaniel has signed to appear on NBC and MSNBC programs. Now, according to the Wall Street Journal, reports have been that an internal backlash at MSNBC says that she won't be appearing over there after all. As you know, McDaniel stepped down from her post on March the 8th after it became very clear that former President Donald Trump would be the GOP nominee for the 2024 presidential nomination. Former North Carolina Republican Party Chairman Michael Whiteley currently serves as RNC Chairman. Trump's daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, is the vice chair. On the Furman Ford text line today, Susan says, according to a Breitbart article, Ronna McDaniel was on Meet the Depressed. Meet the Depressed. That's a play on words there, Susan. Thank you. Telling Kristen Welker that the J6 prisoners shouldn't be released. She did talk about that. Susan points out that the same Breitbart article that Chuck Todd was also on Meet the Depressed and told Kristen Welker that many of his fellow NBC employees were uncomfortable. Yeah, that's what we just talked about, Susan, and you're right. Chuck Todd just really took Ronna McDaniel to task. Chris on the Furman Ford text line, I totally agree with you on the Apple company. I love my iPhone, but I don't like the company itself. And on the length of your podcast, I personally feel 35 to 45 minutes is perfect. Just keep doing what you're doing, Joey. And that's giving us the truth. Chris is responding to, we talked on Friday about Apple and the DOJ's action that they're taking against Apple, claiming that Apple has a monopoly in a number of different areas. And I talked about how that's a real dilemma for me because I like Apple products. I've always had an iPhone for many, many years now. I have an iPad or two. I don't care for their Mac laptops or desktops. I'm a Windows person when it comes to computers, but I like the iPhone products. I like my iWatch. I like my Apple, what do you call them? Apple earbuds, AirPods. But yes, the company itself is as liberal as it can be. But it's a real dilemma, isn't it? And also, thank you, Chris. Appreciate your input on the length of the podcast. That was sort of a discussion we had last week, is how long should Just the Truth be? It varies. Sometimes it's 30 minutes. Sometimes it's 40 minutes. It can be 50 minutes. But I do appreciate your feedback. I'm kind of doing a little poll here. Keep those comments coming, and we'll kind of work this out together. This all started last week when I think it was Phil who noticed that a couple of episodes were shorter than normal. And he kind of called me out on it. Well, not really called me out. He just questioned me about it. And I did. I explained that I kind of give you the headlines. Some days there's more. Some days there's not as much. Dom in Illinois says, I noticed a shortened podcast as well. Y'all are ganging up on me now. He said, I think the ideal podcast length is 45 to 60 minutes, but I could listen to Just the Truth among a few others all day. Be well, Joey. Thank you, Dom. Always good to hear from you. Appreciate you continuing to listen in Illinois. Carolina says, podcast length, would love 3 hours. You're trying to kill me, Caroline. Thank you, though. I appreciate that. Jennifer writes on the Furman Ford text line, hey, Joey, regarding the length of your podcast, whatever time it takes for you to tell just the truth on any given day is fine with me. Thank you, Jennifer. And she says, regarding Apple, you ask if they're a monopoly. Yes. You ask, or are they just a company putting out the best products that they can? Yes, again. So therein lies the conundrum. See, Jennifer, you have the same conundrum I do. She says, I have the new Apple iPhone 15 Pro Max. Well, I don't have that quite yet, Jennifer. I think I have the 14. And she says, a MacBook Air laptop. I like them both. Jennifer sent me a screenshot of where she had shared one of my podcasts about Letitia James' attack on Donald Trump. Thank you. Appreciate that, Jennifer. And please, feel free to share with your friends. If there's a particular episode that you like, share it with your friends. Do like Jennifer did. She had posted it, I think it was on Facebook. She'd done a screenshot and posted it on Facebook with a link to the episode. That's what I need for you to do. We're building a community here, and as my buddy Larry Elder always said, we have a country to save. Faye writes, Joey, I just enjoy your podcast so much until I hate to see Friday. Well, that's sweet of you, Faye. Thank you. She said, love the bartender joke. Laughter all day, as it was so true. Happy Easter to you and your family. We see what happened to the one that was perfect, so we too are not perfect. We'll walk through trials. God bless. Thank you. Our text of encouragement today, I'm in charge of my life, and no one will dictate my path besides me. God bless. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate that. Your comments are welcome as well on the Furman Ford text line. 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Leave me a quick voice message. Comments via email, joey@joeyhudson.com as well. If you have been listening to me for any length of time now, by now, you know how much Peg and I love our little Cocker Spaniels, Jesse and Simon. For dog owners out there, do you sometimes think about skipping their daily walk and think, no big deal? Wrong. And I'm going to tell you why coming up. First, I'm going to talk with you about your refrigerator, though. Did you get up this morning and the refrigerator light didn't come on when you opened the door? That's always a bad sign, isn't it? Well, all you need to do is head over to Pickens, to Discounted Appliance Warehouse. Discounted Appliance Warehouse, if you're tired of buying appliances from inexperienced salespeople, maybe you go into one of the big box stores and all they know is the aisle that the refrigerators are on. They know absolutely nothing about the appliances. Maybe you're going to replace a broken appliance, or maybe you're just upgrading your entire kitchen. You're doing a remodel, and you need all new appliances. Doesn't matter which one. When you're ready, you want the appliance, and you want what's right for your family, and that's what you get at Discounted Appliance Warehouse. They have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating, nearly perfect reviews on Google, and the team at Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they have the knowledge you need to have confidence in your purchase. They'll show you around the warehouse, over 11,000 square feet, slam full of new appliances, and they'll help you find the ideal solution. With expert installation, they have an award-winning service department and extended warranties. They take care of you well after the sale because you become part of the family when you purchase from Discounted Appliance Warehouse. They're located in Pickens and online at dawpickens.com, dawpickens.com. So maybe some days you just, you've worked long hours, you're tired, and you're tempted not to take that little furry friend of yours for a walk or two. You know, Jesse and Simon, they love to get out and play. They love to go on walks, and typically that's 2 or 3 a day. If you think it's no big deal when you say, well, I'm just too tired today, I think I'll skip the walk today, well, think again. Some days it may be tempting to just simply let your dog out in the yard to run and get some fresh air. Kelly Conaboy explained in the Washington Post, that's not really a good idea, though. It's okay to let them out and play, but you still need to do the walk. According to Conaberry, dogs, their walks are not only their main form of exercise, but most won't exercise on their own. So even if they're outdoors in your yard, they need you to play with them in order to ensure that they get the physical activity they need. But it's also important that you walk with them because it's a source of companionship and mental stimulation as well. Going on a walk means spending time with their owners. It also means getting to sniff around and see what's going on in the neighborhood since they were out there last. One owner refers to her dog checking its email while it walks. That's a good way to look at it, isn't it? You ever notice how everything gets their attention? Simon, the least little noise, he will cause him to pause and look around. Jesse, he doesn't miss a thing. Now, if you deny your dog these opportunities, they can get bored. Experts say that it's like reading the same book over and over again, and even experience some of the same symptoms of chronic stress that people do, like depression, anxiety, even immune system issues. And, of course, studies have also shown that walking dogs can reduce stress and improve both mental health and physical health for you, too. It's good for the human people as well. You can read Connoboy's full piece, which is on newser.com or at the Washington Post, which also delves into why you need to let your dog take its time sniffing while on walks. Don't hurry them around. Let them do their thing. That's why they're out there. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Appreciate you joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio to lose weight for the last time. Visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined our mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails with the most up-to-date news. And if you want to receive text messages, be sure and include your phone number in there as well. Like on Friday, at the last minute, I learned that I would be I'll be guest hosting for my buddy Stu Epperson on the Truth Network, which is heard in Greenville on 96.9. It's heard in Charlotte, Raleigh-Durham, Winston-Salem, Utah, Ohio, I think a couple of stations in Florida, but and all over the world on the Truth Network app. But we sent out a quick text message when we learned that we're going to be doing that. So if you missed that, it's because you're not on our text list as well. So send us when you go to joeyhudson.com, click on Connect with Joey, include your email, and if you don't mind receiving a text message every now and then, do that as well. And let me ask you to forward today's episode to a friend, or 2 or 3 or 4. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. Keep the emails coming, joey@joeyhudson.com as well. We're back again tomorrow as we are in Holy Week. Hope you'll plan to join us as well. Remember, folks, God's got this. He's still in control.